Hi, I'm going to show you a couple of things today in regards to these two air compressors. At first sight they look exactly the same, and they are the same. The only difference is the brand. These are two import brands. One comes from Home Depot and the other one comes from Harbor Freight. The Home Depot brand is an H1506F. That's Hotel 1506, F as in Foxtrot. The Harbor Freight one, or the Central Pneumatic one brand, that is a 67696 or a 68149, their product number. But these are exactly the same two air compressors. The only difference is the labels on them. One of the most common parts that breaks is this whole regulator assembly. I'm going to show you how to replace that in either one of these. Okay, the first thing you're going to need is you're going to need a long Allen wrench key here, and this particular one is 5mm. So I have to get this in here to get the shroud off to start with. If you have a quick change bit that goes on a cordless drill, that would make this a lot faster, but today what we have. Now what you're going to find a lot of times is inside of here, just like I'm finding, there's dirt and debris inside these holes. It's a common spot for dirt and debris to get in here, so you may have to get all the sawdust out so that you can get to the Allen wrench, the Allen screw. So we're going to go ahead and take these four off. So what you have are four of them, and I'll come back and once I get this off, I'll show you what we need to do next. Now if you notice on this particular unit, most of the time it'll have a quick disconnect on the front right here, as you can see. And you're going to have to pull that off. It makes it an easier job if you get that off first prior to trying to get this whole cover off. So let's go ahead and get that off. We'll use a crescent wrench to start with. Or you can use an open end wrench once you find out what size it is. Okay, now that we have that off, let's see if we can pop this cover off. Let's see how easy it is to get the cover off to start with. For one, you have to make sure that every single one of these screws are out. This one was not. This may be the special tool you have to go out and get, or you can get a quick drive bit and get an extension to be able to do that. But here, looks like we're pretty much there. Okay, so what we have here, now you can see the inside of this unit. Now what you have is you have this little pump. And this covers and protects the pump as well as keeps the airflow to cool the unit down. We have a separate section showing the pump assembly. But if you look inside the top of the shroud, you're going to see this is the manifold we're going to replace today. Inside the shroud you have four screws, four bolts that hold the manifold assembly on. And these are 8mm. Just get yourself a nut driver or a socket wrench. 8mm drive on there. 8mm socket. And take the bracket assembly off that's holding this regulator manifold to the shroud. Once you get those four in, you can see that it pretty much lifts off very, very easily. And what we're going to do, now here you're going to notice that you have a pressure switch. This pressure switch has two wires. It doesn't matter which wire goes on what, it's just to break the circuit. Once it senses tank pressure to the maximum PSI. In this particular one, it's 135 PSI. As you can see, we're having a little difficulty getting this one off. They have crimped that one pretty good at the factory, so we'll get some needle nose pliers and we'll see if we can't give it a little encouragement. There we go, get it off. Next thing you have a ground wire from your power cord to ground this thing properly. And you're going to take the Phillips head and take the ground screw out, take the 2 ground wires out, lay them to the side. The next thing you have is you have this pressure line which is coming to the tank, and it's actually feeding this regulator. So you disconnected those wires. The next thing you want to do is drain any excess air out of your tank. So in draining the excess air out of the tank, when you disconnect the supply line, you're not going to get a rush of air like I just got a few minutes ago. So drain the air out of the tank and then simply push the tube in and then push this black collar to release it. It's a quick release mechanism. So now you have your regulator. What we're going to do is we're going to replace it because this regulator is defective. It's not adjusting the air pressure. We're going to replace it with a replacement unit, as you can see right here. What we're going to need to do is to take these parts out and put them into the new regulator. If you put this in a vise, you're going to need to remove the quick connector in the back. You're going to need to remove both gauges on top. You're going to need to remove this pressure switch. And the last thing you'll need to remove is the safety valve. So let's go ahead and lock this down in the vise. Let's see. There's actually some, there's a hexagonal spot on the vise to be able to put this in. Okay, on this repair, the hardest thing is to get these gauges and all of the gauges, the quick disconnect, pressure switch, and the safety valve out. They use a Loctite in there. You can try all you want without. I've tried it without heat, and it's going to require a little bit of heat. You've got to put this thing on very low as to not damage the parts. You're just trying to get the aluminum section of the body that's holding the male thread, so you just give it a little bit of heat to loosen up that thread sealant. And then once you do that, it will actually come off. As you can see, it's coming off here quite well. You don't want to put too much heat on there because you're going to melt the parts. You're just trying to loosen the sealant off the threads. This is the hardest part of this repair. Next thing you're going to do, the same thing for the quick disconnect. This one's really tricky. You're going to just touch it barely with heat. The same thing, I'm going to go ahead and hit the housing area for this gauge as well. Now for these, I'm going to go ahead and use a wrench. I'm not going to use a big crescent wrench for it. Trick is here to find exactly what that size is. It's going to be metric, we know that. This is an import unit, so this is a 15 millimeter. Nope, too big. Let's try 14. 14 millimeter. Alright, here we go. And there we go. It's going to go ahead and take this thing off. Next thing is the 14 millimeter also for the safety valve. What do you know? So we're taking the safety valve off. That's going to require some more heat. Is this not? Well, I did heat it up a little bit. So it is coming off. So we'll take that off. Next is going to be the pressure gauges. They have a little square section here to be able to get a wrench on. But the trick in that is it's going to have to be a very thin wrench. They don't give you a whole lot of room to play with that. It looks like it's going to be an 11 millimeter. Let's go ahead and see if we can find a flat to be able to put this on. And that hexagonal part will work, it seems like. So let's go ahead and see if I put enough heat on here. Yep, I put enough heat on there. So we take this off. These gauges They go up to 250 psi, and they're the same gauge, so it doesn't matter if you switch them up. So next thing we're going to do is try to find another flat area to be able to take this gauge off. Let's put it over here so you can see what's going on. Being careful not to damage the threads where you just took the other gauge off. So here, nope, going to require heat again. So what we're going to do again is just put a little bit of heat on the housing, just to warm it up to be able to break the seal. We find that a lot of these imported units, they do not use Teflon tape. They use this green sealant, almost like a Loctite. Let's see if that's enough. Go back to our little wrench. Yep, and that was enough. You see, I just put about 20 seconds of heat on there to be able to do that. So we'll get all these parts off and I'll be right back. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to take the parts that we just removed from the old regulator, the manifold assembly, and we're going to install them into the new part. Most of the time that people replace this regulator assembly is due to the fact that either the regulator stopped working, it won't adjust the tank pressure anymore to the hose, or the other thing, a crack forms or the manifold snaps entirely. And that's why you're going to replace this part. So let's go ahead, put some Teflon tape on all of the male threads of the parts we took off and install it into the new manifold regulator. Okay, if you notice, I've gone ahead and wrapped Teflon tape both around all of the new parts, putting about 3 wraps around there clockwise, making sure not to have any Teflon tape over the orifice here. So we'll go ahead and put this back on. Like I say, I'm going to just put them in hand tight to get going, and then we'll use our 14mm wrench and we'll snug it up here pretty good. We don't want to crack the aluminum, so we want to make it nice and tight, making sure that it seals, but not to the point to where we damage the new manifold we just bought and have to get another one. This one here, going ahead and tighten this pressure switch up nice and tight, but not too tight. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to put our pressure gauges in the front. We'll screw these in, making sure not to cross thread them. A lot of times what I'll do, if I haven't feel I'm going to cross thread them, I back it out counterclockwise until I feel that it grips the threads, and then I'll go ahead and turn it clockwise. The thing we need to make sure of is that this is in the right location. You don't want these upside down, so now you're going to take the other wrench, which was at 11, and we're going to put these in nice and firm and tight and snug, but like I say, not too tight. And this is going to be oriented so that the pressure switch is on the left hand side and these gauges are facing up so that you can see what they read once you get it all put back together. I'm going to finish it up like that. And that's pretty much sealed. We have all this back. The last thing we're going to do is we're going to put in the quick disconnect. Now this is going to go on the bottom, so you're going to place this, like I say, we're going to snug that in there. And then you're going to take your 14mm, you're going to tighten this up. Now this swivels. You just have to make sure that you get it in tight enough, but not too tight. And as you see, this swivels on the top so you can orient it whichever way the tube's going to be. Now the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to install it back inside. Okay, now we're ready to reassemble and install this regulator back into the manifold. As you can see, I've simply taken it and put it back inside so that it lines up with the holes. You've got to get the safety valve through that hole, then get the front piece in. So make sure that the ring is down, the pull ring is down, And as you can see, it's now lined up perfectly. It's a matter of taking the straps. You can do that and just get those started. Now one of these uses a closer hole than this one over here. This one here, it expands over the entire spot. You'll see that the holes that the screws go in are set apart wider for that. So now we're going to take our nut driver, snug this down. These are self-cutting. They should go right back in the same threads in which they came out. So make sure that you don't over tighten them and strip them out, because once they're stripped out, you're going to have to run a larger bolt in there to hold it in. This is the only thing that's holding this in. So we're going to snug them down tight. But as you can see, I'm not really getting down on it stripped out. I just want to make sure it's not going to wiggle once we get it in there. That one needs a little more. So it's nice and firm. Okay, next thing we're going to do, very, very important, is to take the ground screw. It has a little washer underneath of it, a little star washer. And you want to take this, use your Phillips head, go through both of the wires. And this goes in the hole right next to the quick release. Okay, so as you can see right here, it's pretty easy. Just put those 4 bolts back in. You've got your screw that holds both ground wires on, and you're going to tighten this up right here. Do this pretty tight, again without stripping out that aluminum, zinc, or whatever it's made out of. Next thing you're going to do is you're going to attach your leads to your pressure switch. Again, like I say, it doesn't matter which one goes to what. All it does is cut out the pressure switch when it senses tank pressure has reached 135 for this unit. Make sure they're on there. That was easy. You're going to swivel around the quick disconnect, and you're simply going to push it in and then pull it back out to make sure it's nice and tight. Once you have that done, you're pretty much ready to flip it over and to put the assembly back together. Okay, the last thing to do now is to put the shroud back over. If you notice that those 4 holes, there's 4 bolts go through the frame here. 1, 2, 3, and 4. So we're going to simply put this over top, making sure everything is nice and tucked out of the way. And line it up. This is where you take that really long, what did I say it was? 5mm. Yep, 5mm Allen wrench. And you just simply go ahead and tighten it all back down. Back here. Here. And last here. Okay. Last thing we're going to do is we're going to install our quick coupler into the front of the manifold. So I'm going to take the Teflon tape, wrap 3 wraps around there clockwise. We're going to screw it back into the manifold. And for this particular coupler, 3/4 inch wrench will do it. So we're going to simply, again, tighten it up, seal the threads, make it snug, but not to crack the new manifold. There we go. So, as you can see, it's nice and sturdy in there. We have a brand new manifold that was leaking. Regulator and everything comes with it. And that is a complete repair. Like I said, the hardest thing with this particular repair is getting the pipe sealant off of the old parts that are inside the manifold. And this is for a Type 2 unit for either the Central Pneumatic version or also for the Husky. They're the same unit, like I said. The only difference is the label on the front of them. So there you go. From Master Tool Repair. Happy repairing.